For many African Americans, the journey of tracing one's roots can be challenging, oftentimes depressing, and in many cases never taken. Due to the purposeful dismantling of our history through slavery and endless acts of oppression, much of our history was lost. My story begins in 1983 in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, at George Washington Hospital. I was a happy baby. And I had a lot of hair. And family was all I knew. I loved time with my great-grandfather in his northeast garden, picking strawberries with my father, and waiting for the grapes to be ripe. Quality time with my Uncle Robert and my parents. Katrina was so strong, and Kevin was loved by all. But the happiness and good times didn't last long. Due to the crack epidemic in the 80s, my parents were unfit to raise me. Soon after, my uncle died, and so did my great-grandfather. Although I was lucky to be raised by my grandparents, I always suffered from depression and a longing to know where it was I came from. So I decided to do something about it. I decided to trace my roots. And I started at Ancestry.com, where I created a family tree. At first, all I had was stories from my grandmother of her childhood, growing up in the 1950s and 60s, living through segregation, and remembering as far back as her great-grandmother. I also had a blue book from a distant relative that focused more on the lighter side of my great-grandmother Margaret, her father Spurgeon, his mother Curlew, and her father Eli. The census allowed me to confirm that he was in fact in the Navy, as it points out their occupation and profession. Before marrying John Walter Weaver, the family book states that Curlew's grandfather and great-grandfather were slave owners, overseers on a plantation she lived on. Ancestry.com allowed me to access decades of slave schedules and take a look at all the slaves that he might have had at any time. Also trace his lineage back to the immigrants from England, the family crest. And on Google I found information of the history of another branch. It provided a long lineage of history and even information on the land they were from. Due to the many shades of color in my family, certain branches were often harder to trace than others. Although the English side was able to be traced back to 1270, the darker sides, like that of Chastine and Nazareth Porter, were much more difficult. After rereading a census for Nazareth, I realized that like many black Americans at that time, his parents, David and Harriet, unfortunately couldn't read or write. Finding out this information, or lack thereof, one can get a better understanding of the kind of life our ancestors might have lived, whether they were slaves, laborers, or free people. It's clear that they struggled through the early colonization of this country, and that only through inspiration, bravery, and community were we able to break free of the chains and provide new opportunities for my generation and generations to come. I found strength in this tree, and in realizing that many of the women from my past were also musicians, in hospitality, and entrepreneurs. This tree helped me to reconnect with family that I've known always. As well as reach out to new people that I've met through making this tree. I continue to have luck in my life and every day. Moved to New York. I live in a place that I love. And I'm on my way to a rewarding new career. The next step is DNA, to try to find my African heritage. But even scratching the surface of this tree has left me feeling happier and more secure than ever.